Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 292 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And Rick, how are you doing today? The Montreal Canadiens season has come to an end.
It has come to an end, and a big season is about to unfold in front of us. The offseason is here, and it may be as exciting as the regular season was. Not to say that the regular season wasn't productive, wasn't an area of growth. I think we saw that at the end of the season. How did the Montreal Canadiens end fifth worst in the league? And there's so much positivity in the fan base. Well, I think part of that has to do with the way the season ended, the couple of games to end the season, a couple of players added to the roster. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the media availabilities for everyone as they cleared out their lockers. And we're going to talk about an overall grade and evaluation for this season. This was an absolute beast of an episode to put together. It was. And we're calling it, are the playoffs on the table for the Montreal Canadiens next season? Well, we have to put things in context first this season before we can talk about that. And I'm just really excited to get it going, and you're going to guide us all the way through this.
Yeah, for sure. In this first segment, believe it or not, we still have a couple of Montreal Canadiens games to talk about. Plus, we'll get to the roster news. We'll talk about the prospects and end this segment with some news from around the NHL. Of course, segment 2, like you said, we're going to be talking about some grades. Making strides in the Canadiens rebuild is what we're calling it. And of course, segment 3 is where we turn it over to our listeners for the Have Your Say segment. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, what area do you think the Canadiens need to improve this offseason? We want to hear from you. And Rick, how can people reach out to us?
You can reach out to us. If you have more to say, you can send us an email. We don't promote our email address as much, but we should. It's hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. Many of you are taking advantage of our text line, the Rocket Sports text line. Really easy to remember, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And the only thing we're going to ask you is that you attach your name, a first name only is plenty, and your location where you are writing from. So we can, if we use your text on the air, we can say, hey, this came from that person. And you can text us about your comments, your questions, your thoughts of what we do. Anything's game. We're looking forward to hearing from you, as we always do.
You can also find us on social media. Just make sure you're following @Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, CanadiensConnection.fm. Make sure that you check out our comprehensive pregame previews and postgame recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. And here's what's happened since we've been gone. Going back to last Saturday, April the 13th, Montreal visits Ottawa, and they lose 5-4 in the shootout. The Sens have won the last 9 meetings between these two. At various points in the game, actually, the Habs had 4 separate leads. Ottawa tied it up every single time. It went all the way to the shootout. Drake Batherson for Ottawa would score the lone goal.
This was all about the special teams. 5 of the 8 goals scored were on the special teams, but both teams. This was the Canadiens finished the season. We're going to talk about 3 games that were all meaningful in some way. This was really meaningful to the Montreal Canadiens. We heard Mike Matheson come out and say this is an important game. There is no way we're going to be swept in the season series by the Ottawa Senators. Unfortunately, the Canadiens were swept in the 3-game season series. And as you said, it's a much more lengthy than this season losing streak that the Canadiens have. This one was all about the special teams.
A couple days off in between before we go to Monday, in which Montreal played the first of a back-to-back against Detroit. This one also, the score was 5-4 for Detroit, and this one went to overtime. The debut of one Lane Hutson, so a lot of excitement for this. Hutson actually put up his first point. It was an assist, and it happened pretty early in the game. The Habs also held a couple of 2-goal leads, but the Wings fought back and tied it up towards the end of regulation. It would go to overtime. Lucas Raymond would make no mistake as he scored the tying goal and the overtime winner.
Incredible game. And yes, it was a meaningful game, partly or maybe mostly because of Detroit and the fact that they were fighting for a playoff spot. And you kind of want to look ahead and think maybe this is what the Canadiens will be doing at some point in their near future. A lot of fans hope it's next season. So it was meaningful in that way, and dramatic, as you said, the way that the game was tied and won in overtime. Dramatic in the fact that it seemed like it was an octopus throw that turned the game, an octopi throws that turned the game around. But mostly for Canadiens fans, this was all about Lane Hutson, waiting for this dynamic player to make his way into the lineup, and he was incredible. Ice time in this game, you had Mike Matheson with the most ice time. That's not a surprise. David Savard with second most ice time. That's not a surprise. Lane Hutson with the third most ice time of any Canadian at 22 minutes in his NHL debut. That was incredible and didn't look out of place. In fact, if you've watched Lane Hutson play in the NCAA, he just took all of what he was doing and successful at and translated it to the NHL game, and it worked. It worked. He was terrific, exciting, dynamic, really fun to watch.
Rounding out the season on Tuesday, Detroit visits Montreal, and yet another 5-4 loss for the Montreal Canadiens. This one also in the shootout. This was the debut of Logan Mailloux, and he also picks up an assist in his very first game. He looked great. The Habs are yet to hold on to any leads during these 3 games. Perron was able to tie the game up 4-4 with seconds left, just when you thought the game was over and Montreal was going to win 4-3. It would go all the way to a shootout, and the only goal scorer would be Patrick Kane, who beat Primo on the very last shot in round 3. This was another very exciting one. Lane Hutson putting on an absolute clinic, making Perron look silly at one point, which led to a Slavkovsky goal. But Montreal in their final 3 games, all 5-4 losses.
How'd you do that? How did you arrange that? And I just wanted to check with you. Did you say, who was it that tied up the game? Did you say David Perron?
Yeah.
Who could have predicted that?
I think you mentioned that, actually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about the live stream later, which was a lot of fun. And yes, unlikely as it was, Sherbrooke native David Perron tied up the game. And yes, I called that one. This was a tremendous game. And again, Lane Hutson playing his second game, his first at the Bell Center. Logan Mailloux, his debut. Lane Hutson, 23 and a half minutes of ice time. Logan Mailloux, 21 minutes of ice time. And the kinds of things that we've seen from both of those players at other levels, they did in the game. Mailloux, the way he protects the puck, the way he challenges forwards. I thought he showed that he was hard to play against, and that's his calling card. And Lane Hutson, he was tremendous, and earned Uri Slavkovsky a $250,000 bonus. So, and Lane Hutson said, "Hey, I'll give you my Venmo and just whatever kind of bonus you want to send my way, I'm happy with." This was another fun game. It felt like a playoff atmosphere, even though the Canadiens didn't have that to look forward to. The Bell Center was energized by these two young players, and it made for a meaningful end to the season.
So the Canadiens' record at the end of the year is 30-36-13. That's 76 points and 28th in the NHL. The Habs have an 8.5% chance of winning the NHL draft lottery.
That's the fifth best odds of winning the draft lottery. I do the sim once.
Tankathon?
Yeah, Tankathon. I do that once every year. And I know that's not typical that folks go in there and they do it till they get a good result, and that's the fun of it, I guess. I do it once, and I did it last night as I was preparing for the show. And the Canadiens moved up to first overall. That has never happened for me before. Does that mean anything? No, of course it doesn't. But it was a surprising result and awfully fun, and I'll be absolutely amazed and thrilled if that happens for real.
So make sure that you check out Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, feature articles, and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. And here's our roster news. Lane Hutson and Logan Mailloux, as we said, both made their NHL debuts this past week. Mailloux, 1 game, 1 assist. Hutson, 2 games, 2 assists.
Both of them. Just hope for the future for the Canadiens. 2 players who are going to contribute in their own ways. I thought it was again. On this podcast last week, I said that I had no inside knowledge this time about Logan Mailloux, but I felt strongly that he was going to be recalled. He was for the final game, and I think that was a nice nod to him for all the fine season that he had in Laval, and it didn't really affect Laval at all. For Lane Hutson, also a tremendous season. I know many of you were hoping for a Hobie Award. Didn't happen, but that doesn't take away from his season. And in the Bell Center, when Detroit came for the last game of the season, the Boston University Terriers, his teammate, there was 4 cars of 4 players each. 16 players made their way to the Bell Center to cheer on Lane Hutson. And this is what he had to say. This was a quote during intermission about his Bell Center experience.
Yeah, it's pretty special. The Bell Center is a special place, and it's the greatest franchise in the NHL. So no complaints.
Love it.
That's fantastic. Just the Bell Center, the greatest franchise. That's exactly what you want to hear. And for another set of fans, maybe they wanted to hear this from Logan Mailloux when it was mentioned that it was his first period of NHL hockey, his first assist and first NHL point.
Logan, première période, première passe, un premier point déjà. Comment tu t'es senti sur la glace du Centre Bell?
Ouais, non, c'est incroyable ici. Jouer avant les partisans ici, c'est spécial, c'est sûr.
It's incredible here, and talked about the fans and how special they are, both of them. And I'll just mention, how about Mailloux and his not only being able to communicate in French, but his accent. He was right there. He sounded great. And of course, he's done that in Laval all year, but perhaps Canadiens fans wanted to hear that as well. There's 2 players who love playing at the Bell Center already, and fans are, if they don't already, are going to love them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to hear that from both of them. Great quotes. And yeah, very impressed with Logan Mailloux's French. Like you said, I think we've heard him say things in French all year in Laval and be able to communicate with the French media. But if you haven't already, there you go. You have to be excited about Logan Mailloux, if not anything else, because of that. Joshua Waugh has recovered from his hand injury and has been cleared to return to play. He's been out since March, and he suited up for Laval in Belleville.
Yeah, it was good. The prediction was he went out with a hand injury. I think it was the 19th of March that he'd be out 4 to 6 weeks. They're pretty close, like dead on with that prediction. He was able to come back and help the Laval Rocket in their second last game of the season.
Arber Xhekaj had successful shoulder surgery. He'll be set to return next season. We talked about this last week, but certainly glad that this went well. Rick, I believe we have some audio coming from Arber Xhekaj talking about this situation.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a tough season for me. It was a lot of ups and downs all year, and I think with my shoulder bugging me all kind of throughout the year, and I was kind of hiding that because I wanted to play, so that was on me. But I think I finished off strong, and that's what matters to me.
You hate to hear that not that the surgery went well and all of that. That's wonderful news, of course. But you hate to hear that a player was hiding an injury because he wanted to stay in the lineup. There was opportunities, especially when he was recalled after. It was difficult for him to be sent to Laval. He performed well in Laval, and he progressed his game. But then when he had the opportunity to be called up, he hid that injury. Apparently, a lingering injury from junior that got progressively worse, and you may have noticed that Logan Mailloux, Arber Xhekaj didn't fight nearly as often as he did the previous season. He said it was tough for him to decline fights, but he just knew that he couldn't do that with his shoulder in the shape it was. It gives a new perspective on the skills competition and his 100-mile-an-hour plus slap shot in that. But the best news is that now he's had both shoulders done, and he's looking to make a full recovery over the summer and be ready for training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that, and just hoping that these shoulder injuries don't continue to come up for him. And it's unfortunate to hear that he was trying to hide these injuries because he wanted to play so bad. So at the very least, I'm happy that he'll have time to recover this offseason. Forward Luke Tuch signed a 2-year entry-level contract with the Canadiens and a one-way contract with the Laval Rocket. He made his debut Friday night against Belleville, along with a few other players that were sent back down.
Yeah, Luke Tuch, of course, a teammate of Lane Hutson, and good to get him into some action before the end of the season. He is a big body player. Has some skill, and is going to bring grit to the lineup, whether that's at the Laval Rocket level or whether he impresses enough at training camp to get up to the big level.
The Canadiens loaned defensemen Justin Barron, Logan Mailloux, and Jaden Struble to the Laval Rocket, along with Joshua Waugh. All of them suited up on Friday against Belleville. I think each one of these players performed spectacularly during their call-ups. For Jaden Struble, it was a bit of a longer call-up. For Justin Barron and Logan Mailloux, a little bit shorter, but I was very happy with each one of these players throughout their time in the NHL.
So we remember at the trade deadline, the Canadiens papered, as they call the phrase, Jaden Struble and Joshua Waugh to make them eligible to be returned. Logan Mailloux was just called up. Barron was called up on the emergency recall. So they were all sent down as a flotilla to help out the Laval Rocket in their pursuit of a playoff spot. And you're very correct in saying, they all showed something this season, and they all showed some progression for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Kent Hughes announced a 2-year contract option for head coach Marty St. Louis. So Marty St. Louis already had 1 year left on his contract, and therefore with the 2-year option, I believe this goes until the end of the 2027 season. Feel free to correct me on my math on that one, but I guess Kent Hughes and company very happy with what they've seen from Marty. Personally, I feel a little bit surprised by this, but they're betting on their guy. Their guy is Marty. He's well liked by the fans, and I think there's a bit of a belief that a lot of players will want to play for MSL.
Yeah, and the date, if you're counting, if you want to circle it on your calendar, is June 30th, 2027. That's just over 3 years from now. That's when his contract now expires. With that, the Canadiens opting for taking that contract option. It was a team eligible option to add 2 years to his contract. And you're right. I think that he's beloved by the fans. He's loved by the players. And I think that during the press conference, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton believe that he's also going to be a draw when they get a chance to sign free agents, that he's going to that Marty St. Louis is going to be helpful with that. That the players are going to want to play for Marty St. Louis. Obviously, a player's coach, and we've talked about whether that's going to change, if his approach is going to change, and if he can change when the Canadiens get into a more competitive position, when they're challenging for a playoff spot for a Stanley Cup, whether he's the right coach then. But I think what Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes, they're looking at this as a bit of a development project as well, that he's going to progress and he's going to grow his coaching game and learn by then. And in saying that, they said that they felt there was no reason to add an experienced coach. There's been a lot of talk about that. Add an experienced coach to the bench. Not much experience, collective experience behind the bench for that group. They said they're not interested in doing that right now. Kent Hughes' next step is to interview and talk to the assistants, and they're going to need contracts as well. I think we can say confidently that if Marty St. Louis is the figurehead and the beloved guy, that his right-hand man is Trevor Letowski, who has done an outstanding job. Even when Marty went behind the bench, not knowing how to change lines and prepare and all those kinds of things, it was Trevor Letowski who was there. And when Marty had to go and deal with a family matter, it was Trevor Letowski that stepped in, and it was seamless, the transition. He was great. So I think that the management is happy with the coaching staff, and certainly no changes as far as head coach going forward for the next 3 years.
Moving along to some other news, and this is probably some more positive stuff. Nick Suzuki was named winner of the Molson Cup Player of the Year for the 23-24 season. The captain was named first star of the game 4 times, second star 10 times, and third star 5 times. I know this is quite often chosen by I guess the amount of times they're named a star of the game. I think just in general, Nick Suzuki probably the MVP of the Montreal Canadiens, if I'm being honest, for this season.
Yeah, the 3 stars have lost their relevance, given the way they're selected these days. However, this one was right. This one was there was no other choice. It was Nick Suzuki, and for all the reasons you said.
David Savard was named winner of the Jacques Beauchamp Molson Trophy. The trophy is awarded annually to the Canadiens player who had a dominant role during the regular season without earning any particular honor. This one I'm a little bit perplexed by. I'd like to see a little bit more of an explanation for this choice. When I think about the Jacques Beauchamp Molson Trophy, I was thinking more along the lines of, say, like a Caden Gooley, who I thought was a little bit underpraised, but performed very, very well. To me, David Savard in general was a little bit curious here.
Yeah, David Savard won the award last year. It's not often that they do back-to-back winners like that. This is an award voted on by the media. I'm with you. They got this dead wrong. When the votes came out, Savard the most, first place, Jake Evans second, Yoel Armia third, Caden Gooley fourth. And given the criteria, I think they got that absolutely upside down. I would have been with you. Caden Gooley had a tremendous season for his and deserves recognition that he wouldn't have otherwise got. Then Yoel Armia, then Jake Evans. Jake Evans, the Swiss Army knife. You can play him up and down the lineup, and he's not going to look out of place, but not be up for any other honor. And then maybe David Savard, the shot blocking machine. So. We'll agree on the Molson Cup. We'll disagree on the Beauchamp Molson Trophy.
Nick Suzuki was selected as the team's nominee for this year's King Clancy Memorial Trophy. This trophy is awarded by the NHL to the player who has had the most significant positive impact in his community. Suzuki is one of 32 nominees selected league-wide by their represented teams in the NHL on Wednesday.
He was the right, Nick Suzuki was the right representative for the Canadiens. There are some strong candidates around the league. I don't know that he'll be selected as the overall winner of the King Clancy, but nonetheless deserves recognition.
Although the Montreal Canadiens season has come to an end, some players will still be playing. Cole Caulfield and Juraj Slafkovsky will be representing USA and Slovakia, respectively, at the 2024 IIHF World Championships. Seems a little bit underwhelming. I felt like more Montreal Canadiens players could have made an appearance, and maybe they will. There's still a few to be determined. I'm excited to see what these two can do in games that matter. During Slafkovsky's draft year, all you heard about was his spectacular performance at the Olympics. So here's another World Championship in which he'll have an opportunity to shine. And as for Cole Caulfield, I think this is a very good opportunity for him to extend his season.
So, Cole Caulfield, why are you going to the World Championships?
Play more hockey, grow my game, and obviously play for my country.
All right.
Nice.
Play more hockey, grow my game, play for my country because I'm a patriotic kind of guy. And the other part of it is that certainly the Canadian coach, Team Canada and the U.S. Coaching staff have said this is kind of a you better say yes to this, or you won't be. We won't be thinking of you for the Four Nations Cup and for the Olympics. So Cole Caulfield was asked, do you have Four Nations tournament and the Olympics in the back of your mind?
I think everybody does. I don't know why you wouldn't.
Okay, straight and simple. Of course you would. So he's saying, why wouldn't you accept the nomination? Because you want to go to Four Nations, you want to go to the Olympics. So who didn't go? Who was invited and said no? Well, Sam Montembeault said he was invited, said no. And Mike Matheson was invited, and he also declined to represent Canada. Mike Matheson his wife is expecting a new baby at the end of May. This tournament goes till the 26th. And so he wanted to be home with his family. Sam Montembeault, he just said he wants to work on his game over the summer and didn't find any value. I think that for both of them, they don't have anything to gain by going. They are both of them, revered by the media and most fans in Montreal. And certainly in Montembeault's case, he was praised for being at the World Championship last year, even though there was, other than on his own team, there was virtually no NHLers there. It's going to be different this time around. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that, I don't know that he has an opportunity to be in the conversation for the Olympics or the Four Nations with Binnington and Aiden Hill and Tristan Jarry and Skinner all in the conversation. So I think that Montembeault could only hurt his reputation by going, and who knows, he may not, be the top goalie there anyway. Same goes for Mike Matheson, although he has a very valid excuse, a very valid family excuse.
Yeah, like you said, Sam Montembeault was there last season. If I'm not mistaken, and I'm remembering correctly, I believe Mike Matheson also declined last year. Personally, I think every player has their right to say yes or no to something like this. For whatever reason it is, of course, like you said, in the case of Matheson, very valid reason. In the case of Montembeault, it is what it is. Players have no obligation to have to do that. Of course, there's sometimes injuries involved in this. Sometimes they just want to take a rest or work on their game. So completely fine with me there. There are a couple other players that we will wait and see about. Nick Suzuki says he has not yet made a decision, and Caden Gooley on the possibility of playing for Canada. He's pending his injury recovery. If he's healthy on time and gets invited, he said he would like to go. But in the case of Nick Suzuki, I would like to see him there. It'd be a big opportunity for him, especially with Olympics and the Four Nations. But it's going to be completely up to him. I know he's already played 82 games this year. It's a long season. He could also just benefit from resting and maybe rehabbing a little bit.
Both players have been invited. Both Caden Gooley and Nick Suzuki have received invitations. As you said, Caden Gooley is dealing with, all they'll call it is a head injury. They're not saying the word concussion, but I think it's fair to believe that he's experiencing those symptoms. If those symptoms improve, he said he will go. He will accept, but it's pending his recovery. Nick Suzuki in the press conference said he hasn't made a decision, but Darren Dreger on Friday tweeted this. It sounds like Nick Suzuki and Travis Konechny have both opted not to play. So I think Nick Suzuki, it probably, if Nick Suzuki had announced it and declined it, it would have been news. This way, he said he didn't make a decision, and then he makes that decision later. It's less of a news story, but it sounds like Suzuki is not going to go.
And now it's time to get to this week's winners and losers.
And now it's time for this week's winners and losers on the Canadiens Connection.
So just some winners for this week. Of course, as we head into the off-season, Rick, I'm hearing some wedding bells going.
What?
Yeah, you don't hear that?
I should have loaded up some wedding bells, shouldn't I? Yeah, there's all kinds of things happening in the summer, for sure. Training and injury recovery and all of that. But for 3 Montreal Canadiens, it also means it also means wedding bells. They are going to get married to their respected partners this summer, and that also means that their teammates are going to be traveling a fair bit to at least 3 weddings this summer. Brendan Gallagher, Jake Evans, and Josh Anderson are each going to get married this summer. And Jake Evans said his quote was, "It's going to be a big summer of travel and weddings, but I prefer to say that it's the summer of love." Nicely done, Jake Evans. And so congratulations to each of the happy couples. And once the deed's done, we'll let you know throughout the summer.
For sure. No losers this week, and that brings us to this week's prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
Each week, we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we're going to shine the spotlight on Kitchener Rangers forward Filip Mesar, whose season just came to an end during the playoffs this past week. During his season with the Kitchener Rangers in the regular season, through 45 games, 52 points, and through 10 playoff games, 1 goal, 15 assists, that's 16 points in the playoffs. Filip Mesar, absolutely stellar during his season with the Kitchener Rangers, and certainly looking forward to see what kind of an impact he can make during training camp next season. Someone that I think has fallen off the radar a little bit, but we want to make sure that you all remember his name at least.
So the Kitchener Rangers were swept by their rival, the London Knights. If you don't know, and Mike Rasho keeps reminding me, I am a fan of the Kitchener Rangers. I lived in Waterloo. Love the Rangers and their organization. I also spent a few years in London, and I've been to the gorgeous arena in London and support the Knights when they're not playing the Kitchener Rangers. But I like that organization. I like that team. So this was a bit of a tough series for me. Enough of the personal stuff. Filip Mesar, I think, listen, he clearly felt that going to the OHL and playing with younger players was not for him last season. And he went there and had 51 points in 52 games this season, 52 points in 45 games. So I think he, in both years, there was a kind of a letdown a little bit as the season was going on, and then he ramped it up in the playoffs, especially this year. I think he's had a very successful juniors 2 years in the OHL. And I think the thing that we learned with Filip Mesar is he's smart and his vision is outstanding. And that can only help. Listen, size is going to work against him. And that's one of the reasons that J.F. Wolf said, please, I too many smaller forwards. I don't want him here. And so he was, I'm paraphrasing, but we know Ul's relationship with veterans, and we know his relationship with younger players. That's well documented. So, but I think he handled what he would have seen as a demotion very well, and has come through that. And now it's time for him to join the Laval Rocket, and he'll be a big part of helping them. Will he remain at center? Will he play on the wing? That's yet to be determined. And remember, when he does play, he won't be making his AHL debut. He had 2 games. He played in 2 games at the beginning of this season, 1 last season. So he's already played a grand total of 3 games in the AHL. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how he progresses and develops and is given a good opportunity in Laval. We're just going to also mention, when we talk about centers, we think of Owen Beck, and he has 10 points in 9 playoff games, and his Saginaw Spirit are still in the playoffs. Of course, we talked about him going to the Memorial Cup, but the Spirit lead the Sioux Greyhounds 3-2 as we record here on Saturday.
Moving a little bit south of that border, let's take a look at the NCAA Frozen Four final. Of course, it was University of Denver versus Boston College. So Sam Harris suiting up for Denver, Jacob Fowler for Boston College, and University of Denver wins 2-0 and take the NCAA Hockey Championship. Boston College is known for their offense, and the fact that Denver was able to shut that down, super impressive. Jacob Fowler was really good in net for Boston. He faced a lot of shots, put on a show, but unfortunately a little bit of an underrated University of Denver was able to win. So congratulations to Sam Harris.
And to Jacob Fowler as well. But yes, University of Denver, I think they were third ranked in the country. To be able to plow through Boston University first and then Boston College second, that is Lane Hutson, Luke Tuch first, and Jacob Fowler second. Kudos to the University of Denver. And mostly, I think, to David Carl, their head coach. You are going to hear more about David Carl. He is a tremendous coach. University of Denver now has the most NCAA championships. I believe it's 10. And David Carl not there for all of that, but he's done a tremendous job. And you're going to be hearing about you're going to be hearing his name when it comes to vacancies at the professional coaching level. I'm certain of it.
So let's take a look at the Laval Rocket from this past week. Logan Mailloux was named the AHL All-Rookie, was named to the AHL All-Rookie team for 2023-24 season. Certainly deserved a great rookie pro season for Logan. Certainly someone that I think is getting recognition from around the league here. So congratulations to him on that.
Yeah, the representative at the All-Star game was Logan Mailloux, and then now on the AHL All-Rookie team, had a tremendous season. He's talked about, if you listen to the away broadcast, they talk about him being one of the top defensemen in the American Hockey League. What a transition for him. What a season for him.
And there was a fight at Laval practice the other day. It was Riley Kidney versus Kelly Buchberger. What? Seems like a mismatch, no?
Yeah, this was. To be honest, I don't know how it started, but the clip shows Riley Kidney, and Riley Kidney's not known for his physical play, lining up against 57-year-old. I may get that wrong, but it's close. Kelly Buchberger, the assistant coach with the Laval Rocket. And Kelly Buchberger was having, call this a play fight, but he was having none of it. He's a veteran of 1,100 NHL games. He had 2,300 penalty minutes during that time. And he was throwing them, but missing. Man, if any of them had connected, Riley Kidney would have been out till October. And then wrestled him down the head. It was jersey over the head and wrestled him down to the ground. Kelly Buchberger and of course the entire team was hooting and hollering and banging their sticks and thought this was tremendous. And there was some audible gasps, thinking that this was going to be, a little bit more light than it turned out to be, but all to kind of break the stress and the tension at practice with the Laval Rocket heading into such an important weekend.
And a pretty important week this past week for Laval. Going back to last Saturday on the 13th of April, they keep their playoff hopes alive by winning 5-1 versus Cleveland. Leah Sanderson led the way with 2 goals there. Last night, Friday night, on the 19th, Laval visits Belleville with the season on the line here, and it all came down to the final seconds. Igor Sokolov for the Belleville Senators scoring back-to-back goals in the third period, one of them on the power play, and the Belleville Senators clinched that final playoff spot.
Yeah, the Laval had to win both games in regulation. It didn't mean anything if they won in overtime. So with the game tied, JF pulled the goaltender, and as you said, that led to a Belleville goal in the dying seconds, giving them the regulation win and giving them a path to the playoffs. Both the Laval Rocket and the Utica Comets were eliminated.
Laval they have one more game left, but with one game left in the season, their record is 33, 36, and 2, 74 points in 6th place in the North Division. With that said, the playoff hopes pretty well dead at this point. There's going to be one more game to go, but unfortunately, with Laval failing to win in regulation last night, they have no chance at the playoffs.
No, they're, as you said, one more game to go through the motions. Belleville unquestionably will be sitting a lot of their players for sure. We'll see what kind of lineup that JF Houle puts out there in what could be his last game as a head coach. We'll see. He's playing without a contract he will be without a contract at the end of the season, as we told you about last week. Luke Tuch made his debut, his AHL debut on Friday night. We know that we told you about Florian Jacquet making his debut. We told you about the flotilla of players that joined up, all young players that are going to be part of the future. That didn't sit too well with Toby Bisson, who said that they might have had a better chance had they iced a lineup of veterans. And, of course, you know how Jeff Houle loves his veterans. I think it's probably important to point out that the Belleville Senators tied that game on Friday night. Laval had a 2-1 lead and was constantly heading to the penalty box, giving the Belleville power play chance after chance after chance. Belleville didn't connect on their first few, but it was a Mitchell Stevens penalty with about 5 minutes left to go, and the Belleville tied the game with Stevens in the penalty box. And hate to break it to Toby, but I don't think that Mitchell Stevens is a young player. So,
yeah, not to mention that Toby and the veterans had the entire season to get into the playoffs. Up until that point, it wasn't just about this one game. Anyway, the Laval Rocket have one game left on the season. That's going to be Saturday night tonight. Belleville comes to town, and like you said, we'll see what kind of lineups both of these teams dress. And I think it'll be a nice little farewell to the fans in Laval for the season.
For sure.
Going down one more league to the Trois-Rivières Lions, the Montreal Canadiens ECHL affiliate. Last Saturday, they shut out Worcester 2-0 on the Sunday because it was a back-to-back. They shut out Worcester 4-0. And they make it into the playoffs so far. 2 games played. The series tied 1-1, 4-2 loss versus Norfolk, and a 5-4 victory versus Norfolk on Friday. So far in the playoffs, Cedric Montminy leads Trois-Rivières with 4 goals scored.
And that series, as the playoffs have begun, is tied 1-1 at this point. And good luck to the Lions. It's been such a roller coaster of a season. They started off on a tear. They plummeted to the depths. They were on the brink of being run out of the league. A last-minute buyer came in and saved their season. They had a rally. It all didn't go in that order necessarily, but they made the playoffs and are now continuing their season. And we certainly wish them well. And we know that Chris G is going to be following all the action for Rocket Sports and letting you know what's happening in his weekly Lions notepad that comes out every Monday.
Trois-Rivières ends their regular season with a record of 31, 35, and 3, 5th place in the North Division to get into the playoffs. You can find all of our content on Canadiens prospects at thn.com/Montreal. That's the hockey news from Montreal. And you can find excellent English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League at thn.com/QMJHL. And now it's time for our quotes of the week, and quite a few to get to here. Let's start off with one Nick Suzuki. And you know what? This past season, I think we've all noticed that Montreal has been in a lot of one-goal games. Well, what does Nick Suzuki think about this?
I think we got a lot, room to grow, and it's exciting, and we're definitely not that far off from being a playoff team and, competing for, the Stanley Cup. So that's our goal. Definitely going into next season is to make the playoffs and go for a run.
So that quote, and that's my fault, that's about the playoffs. But we'd like to hear Nick Suzuki's thoughts on the playoffs. His opinion is that the Canadiens, they're not that far away, and they are going to make the playoffs and go on a run. That's the goal for next season. And why does he think that? And the quote about the 1-goal games you'll find right here.
I think we're further along than where people thought we were going to be at this point. So, that's exciting. And I think we led the league in 1-goal losses. So, half of those go a different way. We're probably a playoff team. And I think we're a good group. We beat a lot of really good teams and played a lot of good hockey this year. And I think that's exciting for us going into next year.
So Nick Suzuki vocalized, and if you listen to the cleanout day, a number of players talked about 1-goal games. This was obviously a message that was and stats that were given to them, leading the league in 1-goal games, and it certainly gave players optimism for next year. We're going to talk about how valid that is. We're going to give you some numbers in our evaluation in the second segment. But you heard Nick Suzuki say, flip half of those games that they lost and they would make the playoffs. We'll talk about how true that is, but we wanted you to hear his quote.
Yeah, we'll certainly circle back there. And I love the positivity coming from the captain. I think he says pretty much all the right things here. And, of course, feeling pretty eager to win. Our next quote comes from one Jeff Gordon. He's talking about the plan. What's next and what's the next step to take?
We're at the point where, we have a lot of assets. We have a lot of good players. It's moving in the right direction. And that's, for Kent and I and Marty to figure out what that is, and it's a hard thing to answer because you just don't we'd be speculating on what that could be. We spent a lot of time talking about it when the right time is, and we all feel comfortable we're moving in the right direction. We just want to make sure that we have a plan and that we're not doing something short term to deviate from what we want to be long term.
So he's talking about the plan. He's talking about the next steps, the what's going to happen, and at some point he says we're almost to the most difficult part of the plan, and figuring out when it's best to act and. He was asked about his experience in New York and when it was the right time to add a Panarin and how do you know? And he just said you feel it when the opportunities present themselves, when they do their research, and that they have players. They have players for their core now. They have assets in draft picks. They have prospects, and. If something presents itself, they're going to be ready to act. So this is going to lead to, and we've talked about it for a couple weeks on the show. This is going to lead to, I think, we hope, Canadiens fans hope, a very productive summer. Kent Hughes said this is going to be a very busy summer, but then he said the next summer is even going to be busier, and that has to do with the number of contracts and the turnover and what they have to do then. But I expect the Canadiens to be very active this summer if they get those opportunities.
For sure. And our next quote comes from one Kent Hughes, continuing to talk about the plan, and this one's more in regards to making the playoffs at some point.
And as far as the playoffs are concerned, I want to make the playoffs, right? Jeff wants to make the playoffs. Are we prepared to sit here today and say it's a zero-sum game that we failed if we didn't? No. But I can't believe, first year, end-of-year press conference, we didn't think that was something that needed to be discussed, and we were coming off a last-place finish. We've improved from year to year, and we expect there to be an improvement. How big that is, we'll see. I think Jeff Molson, I read, said we'd like to be in the mix, and I think that's a fair characterization, right? That doesn't mean whether we push it over the threshold or not, I don't know. But we need to be better. We understand that. The fans deserve that. And we're going to try to do what we can. But we won't do it at the expense of this long-term plan.
I think that this is a very difficult needle for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon to thread. That I think that the Canadiens fan base were well prepared in terms of expectations, and they've been patient. They've been very patient, and you've had 3 seasons now where the Canadiens have finished near the bottom of the standings, 32nd, 28th, and 28th. And I think that when Jeff Molson came out earlier in the week and was sat down with TVA Sport, he mentioned playoffs. He said that fans that there is some expectation that the Canadiens are going to be in the mix, and so yes, I think that Kent Hughes is going to have to respond to the fan base saying, "All right, we've absorbed all this pain. Now we're ready. We're ready for the playoffs." They have the pressure of the fan base. Kent Hughes has the pressure of the owner going out and just mentioning the word playoffs in whatever context he said it puts on some pressure. But Kent Hughes reminding everybody, Jeff Gordon also said the same thing. They're not going to sacrifice the plan. The plan is not to make the playoffs. The plan is to build a team that can be competitive consistently over and over and over again, year in, year out, that they're competing and they're contending. And so you can't take shortcuts, even though I think the owner sounds like he wants to please the fans, and the fans definitely want some shortcuts taken.
Yeah, I think a very grounded answer coming from Kent Hughes. It's a difficult one for him to handle given the position that he's in, but I like hearing that he does have a plan and he's looking out for, I guess, long-term success as opposed to maybe some short-term gains to make things look a little bit better. So I certainly appreciate that answer coming from him. Our final quote here comes from Jeff Gordon. This one's more in regards to the style of play that the Montreal Canadiens played this season.
I personally, as a manager of the team, it's hard not to also be a fan of the way we play. I'm really excited about the way we competed to the very end.
And he went on to say not only the way they competed to the very end, but the offensive style of play, the fact that they are a quick team, the fact that they forecheck, that they pressure, that they are an aggressive team. And that they are a resilient team, more so than the previous season. That there is an opportunity to come back or to stay in games, even when they're facing. And we noted games against some of the top teams in the league, where the Canadiens either hung in to the end or hung on to a victory. So Jeff Gordon. He's, as he said, he's one of the managers of the team, but he's also a big fan of the style of play.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think Jeff Gordon, he sounds excited. It sounds like he really believes in the group, so I'm looking forward to seeing what these two have in store over the offseason. Certainly one of the more interesting duos to pay attention to as we head towards things like the draft and free agency and whatnot. And now to end off this segment, we have some news and notes from around the NHL. To start here, the New York Rangers win the President's Trophy. A bit of a surprise to me that that's the team that did it, but 114-point season, that's certainly well-deserved on their end. And with that, the first round of the playoffs will begin on Saturday. It's going to start off with the New York Islanders versus the Carolina Hurricanes. Bit of an earlier game, and then, of course, the big Hockey Night in Canada matchup, the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Boston Bruins, which I'm sure a lot of people will be keeping an eye on that series as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to see either team win, but that doesn't work that way. It's going to be interesting. I think that Canadiens fans are Canadiens fans mostly, but that a good portion of them will be keeping an eye on the playoffs. Maybe some of them will be rooting for a Canadian team to go far. I lived in Winnipeg. My team has always been the Canadiens, but I have a fondness, as I've said before, for the Jets. They've had a remarkable season and could do some damage, have a difficult first round opponent in the Avalanche, but is it going to be the Leafs that go the furthest as far as the Canadian team? I don't think so. Is it going to be the Jets? Is it going to be the Canucks? We'll see. And are you? We didn't discuss this beforehand. I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have a rooting interest here? Is there any team around the league that you would like to see do well in the playoffs?
Well, I don't know if it's so much of a team as it is just Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
At some point, something has to give. Connor McDavid certainly deserves a Stanley Cup at some point in his career. I'd love to see that happen this season. And I did do my playoff bracket already. I've got Boston and Edmonton in the final, with Edmonton winning. And I think I put in like 65 goals in that final round or something, just because, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. So I'm excited to see how that all pans out.
And excuse me for when I mentioned the Canadiens team, somehow I left the Oilers off my list. Sorry about that. To the Oilers, I had to do a poll for the Hockey News. All the editors contributed to a poll, and I have the Carolina Hurricanes and the Dallas Stars in the final in mind, with Carolina winning the Stanley Cup. So we'll see how our predictions work out there.
Oh, you're rooting for KK to get a Stanley Cup. I see how it is.
How about Teuvo Teravainen? Rooting for him to get a Stanley Cup, and knowing that he's going to be available this summer, and knowing that maybe Carolina won't be able to sign him if they choose Gensel, and maybe, remember, he was high on the list for the Montreal Canadiens draft. Trevor Timmons really liked him, didn't get to draft him. Could he be added to the top six? Wow, did I ever take a left turn there? We'll talk about free agents as we get closer to that date. But Teravainen, think about that.
The biggest news coming out from this past week is the NHL Board of Governors voted on Thursday to establish an NHL team in Utah. They'll start off just with the team name Utah, and no nickname, no special jerseys as of yet. And the team moving there will be the Arizona Coyotes. So after years of no NHL building, playing in a college barn, this Arizona team finally gets put to rest. Feel bad for the fans. The fans certainly deserve better. I think hockey will eventually work in Arizona, but maybe under a different owner. Nonetheless, excited to see a team in Utah. Certainly, I guess more of a state that hasn't had hockey, but I know there's a lot of fans, and so far they're selling a lot of tickets. 22,000 season ticket deposits, I believe, was the number for a 12,000 seat arena, the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. That's what, 10 times more than what Arizona had?
Yeah, versus the 5. And with a plan to add, I think it was another 4,000 or 5,000. And they want to get up to 17,000 for hockey. Of course, it's the home of the Utah Jazz right now, and they're looking at a renovation right downtown rather than there's a plot of land that they could also build a brand new building, but would like to reinvigorate the downtown. How this all came together in such a short period of time. Gary Bettman apparently approached the Arizona Coyotes owner Alex Morello on March the 6th with his idea. We also know that on the other side, it was Ryan and Ashley Smith for the Utah group. In and around the All-Star game, they put out a letter saying they were publicly interested in an expansion franchise. Gary Bettman, during the All-Star festivities, he didn't mention Salt Lake City. He mentioned, as far as expansion, he talked about Houston, he talked about Atlanta, he talked about Kansas City, Cincinnati, even Omaha, Nebraska, and somehow it was Ryan and Ashley Smith that put this all together in a very short period of time, and a very creative way of adding this team without creating an expansion process. It's odd. Essentially, the NHL bought back the Arizona franchise, and they decommissioned the Coyotes. They made them inactive, and gave them a window of 5 years to get an arena fully built, an NHL caliber, state-of-the-art arena built, and they could reapply anytime in those 5 years. And for his trouble and bad management throughout, Alex Morello was given $1 billion for that. And he can give it back if he wants to get back into the league. On the other side, it was Ryan and Ashley Smith that came up with $1.2 billion. Why the difference? Well, there's $200 million to spread amongst the 31 NHL owners, $6.5 million apiece. And not surprisingly, they all said yes to this proposal. So what's happening is that the players, they said about 70 players, that includes the roster, that includes the prospects, that includes the entire list that Arizona has, will be moved for that $1.2 billion to Utah, as well as the hockey operations department intact. And Ryan Smith said, they asked, is Andre Tourney safe? Is the GM and he said, we need people. And all this money that we're spending, all it's doing is buying people. So, yes, we will be keeping the people for now. That was asked by Guillaume Lafrancois from La Presse, who was at the Salt Lake City press conference. And so there's going to be some hiccups as they move. The arena is going to be 12,000 seats, but still better than they experienced in Arizona. And Gary Bettman was asked, does this bother you? And he said, well, based on where we've come from, I'd like no arena drama, please. And a bit of a shot that if you watch both press conferences, Alex Morello was uncomfortable, and the whole thing was really clunky. He was very defensive. A dozen times Gary said no. When they asked him a question, the media did, Gary Bettman said, no, I'll take this one. I'll answer it. And even at one point stopping him by putting his hand on his shoulder, on his arm, and Gary took over. This has been a disaster in Arizona, and it's not because there's not good hockey fans there. It's been bad management. It's been bad ownership throughout. We remember the NHL owned the team for a while, and I honestly feel for the fans of the Winnipeg Jets, because their team, who was having far less issues, that team was ripped out and by Gary Bettman and taken to Arizona, and it's been a disaster since then. So I fully support the new owners, and they seem like they know what they're doing. They have full support of all the elected officials in Utah, And I think they got a lot of work to do, but they've got a good base. They've got good prospects. They got a good young team. Logan Cooley, they'll come out of this pretty well, I believe.
So coming up, we'll hear a brand new message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then we'll get to our big topic segment, Making Strides in the Canadiens Rebuild. This is Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The chase for the Stanley Cup is on, and if you're looking to light the lamp, nothing beats the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. From the start of playoff beards all the way till hoisting of the cup, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. The big question is, which game or series or team are you betting on first? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/ice for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at The Spinella. And with me in the studio is the president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And just a reminder here to make sure that you hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcast player, favorite podcasting app, however you get your podcasts. That way you never miss a single episode. And it's report card time, year-end evaluation, and a look ahead based. And we're going to be giving everyone letter grades here. We're going to go A to F. For each player, we're going to categorize it. We'll start off with our A's, B's, C's, move down the list like that. And it was difficult to come up with how we wanted to do these report cards. Lots of different things to consider. It's kind of a combination of expectations, performance, role, and comparison to similar players around the league, and that will equal value. And what do we mean by comparison to similar players? Well, let's say Nick Suzuki, number one center on Montreal. Let's compare him to other number one centers around the league and see how he comes out. I think it was important for us to base it off of that. And Rick, do you have anything else to add to tee this up?
Yeah, I think we shouldn't be surprised that the fans do their own kind of informal evaluations, and they come up with this player or that had a wonderful season. And fans, it's how much they like the player. It's how excited they get by a player. We try to take a more objective approach, mainly because as you said, you laid out the criteria that it's performance plus role plus expectations that leads to the value. And it's also it's informed by statistics. It's informed by discussions that we have with management or scouts or. I think that it's normal for Montreal Canadiens fans to have a pretty insular view about this is how I like this player. I don't pay attention to the other players in the league. I just like this player. Ours is going to be a different approach. The other part of it, and if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you know that my other hat, my career is in education and a university administrator and professor for a bit, had to do evaluation, didn't like to do grading and evaluations necessarily. But so I might take a little bit different approach to this. But we're going to be upfront and say that a lot of different things went into this. For me, my bottom line was how all those things, performance, role, expectations, lead to value to the team.
Yeah, and get that Rocket Sports text line open as we go through 5853 Rocket.
Yes.
If there's something we say you don't agree, you can type it out right away as we go along here. And without further ado, do you want to start off with our A's?
That's a good place to start, sure.
Perfect. So I'll lead the way here. Not too many A's. The first one, of course, Nick Suzuki. I feel like that's the obvious one for me. Career high 33 goals, 77 points. Still a little bit of room to grow, but of course, the best Hab, the MVP of the season. I'm also throwing in a pair of young defensemen, Hutson and Mailloux. Small sample size, but in the 3 games combined, I thought they were spectacular. I'm very excited for them, and even with their respective teams before joining the Montreal Canadiens, they had a great season. So 3 A's and a bit of a small sample size for 2 of them.
Yeah, and I think there you're talking about value. The value that Logan Mailloux and that Lane Hutson delivered to the organization, making those last 2 games meaningful, bringing excitement and joy to the fan base, outdid anything that Colin White and Tanner Pearson did throughout the however many games they played by a pretty wide margin. So Nick Suzuki, for obvious reasons. Why don't I give him an A+? Well, because I look at players around the league. Is he better than McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews, Pettersson, Draisaitl, Crosby, Braden Point? So just to stay grounded and remember that this team finished 28th in the National Hockey League. Nick Suzuki gets an A. I also gave an A, even though it was a short audition for Mailloux and Hutson, a very successful one in both cases. Their impact was immeasurable, so they also get A's. I'm also going to give, don't forget about Sean Monahan, who played 49 games for the Montreal Canadiens. He gets an A in his ability to come back after injury and play a full season. No, he didn't play a full season. He played a full season +1. What? He played 83 games this season. 83 games, just because of the schedules, the way it worked out. Fantastic season for Sean Monahan. Brought back a first-round pick. So Suzuki, Monahan, Mailloux, and Hutson get my A's.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list. And just in case I didn't mention it before, Rick, you and I both have different grades, just to clarify that along the way. And with that, let's get to our Bs. And once again, I'll kind of lead the way in here. Not too many Bs. Slavkovsky, I have as a B. Being honest, terrible start. Let's not forget about just how unwatchable Slavkovsky was out of the gate here. The second half of the season, things really picked up. He got to his 50 points. He got to his 20 goals. So full credit there, but puts him all the way up to a B. Also in the B section, I include Alex Newhook. Didn't play as many games, 55 games, 34 points. I thought he was pretty good, not spectacular, but I think he earns that B. The other 2 I'm throwing in for B are Gouli and Joshua Waugh. A bit of a smaller sample size for Waugh, but I was impressed with what I saw from him there. And Rick, I'll let you read out your grade letters for B.
All right, so I went a little more granular on this. I have B pluses, I have Bs, and I have B minuses. I know. For the B plus, and with the reason that I just wanted to make small distinctions between the groupings. B plus Caden Gouli, and B plus to Yoel Armia. I'm very impressed with Yoel Armia and what he was able to do, the 2 stints in Laval and coming back. And if Yoel Armia played every season like he just did, he'd be well worth his contract. I think that he found a mental approach, as we talked about, that really worked for him. Caden Gooley, I thought he was very good. 5-on-5, Caden Gooley had 4 goals and 15 assists. Who had 4 goals and 17 assists? 5-on-5? That would be Mike Matheson. So with all the praise that Mike Matheson has got, I think Caden Gooley, his numbers 5-on-5 were almost identical. And I think that Caden Gooley had a difficult season, of course, the injury at the end, and the fact that he was forced to play on the right side, not his natural side, and the fact that he wasn't allowed to develop his offensive game because he had to constantly make up for his partner that was roving down the ice all over the place as a forward. So I give a B+ to Caden Gooley, Yoel Armia. In the Bs, Juraj Slafkovsky, for all the reasons you mentioned. Terrible first half, great second half. He figured it out somehow. The Gazelle on ice, the first half and the second half, very productive and using his size. Cole Caulfield, I know it's mentioned that he had a more complete game and those kinds of things. I think that was a PR explanation that they came up with. I think our medical consultant, the discussions that we had with him, given that it's going to take time for him to recover from his shoulder surgery, and therefore it affected his shot, it affected his goal production. We know that measurably it affected the speed of his shots, and we know from his reporting that it affected his accuracy. So I think that less than expected in terms of goals, but was able to find a way to contribute. Alex Newhook, for all the reasons that you mentioned. Brendan Gallagher, I think that the season before, Marty St. Louis tried to completely remake his game. I think this year he played, especially in the second half, he played Brendan Gallagher hockey. He was healthy. The only games he missed, Brendan Gallagher, were the 5 games that he was suspended. He played 77 games this season, which is terrific for Brendan Gallagher. The last 10 games, 5 goals, 5 assists. His line with Armia and Newhook was one of the best to end the season. I thought they were terrific. And my B minuses, I've got David Savard, Mike Matheson, Jaden Struble. Jaden Struble started well, surprisingly kind of tailed off at the end. Jordan Harris had his ups and downs, showed that he was very capable at times, one of the smartest defensemen the Canadiens have. Jake Evans, Swiss Army knife guy, and Mike Matheson, for his offense, I will give him full credit and give him the B-. While we're here, before we get to the C's, sure. Let me, and I know that we usually do in the third segment, our feedback, our comments, our questions, those kinds of things. But we received a text on the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET, with just a comment, and perhaps they heard some of the criticism that we've leveled towards Mike Matheson in the past. Unfortunately, this was unsigned. Really like to know who and where. As we mentioned before, the text says this: Mike Matheson played 25 minutes a game, quarterbacked the power play, and is bilingual. What else do you want? Pens and Panthers wish they had him back. All right. Well, he played 25 minutes a game. All of that is correct. 25 and a half minutes a game. That's correct. But what does that have to do with anything? You're not saying whether he played well or not. I think the only thing it says that he was eating minutes, and obviously he was playing against the team's best on the other side. But how did he do? Well, he he was a minus 24. Is that a stat in and its own valid? No, but when you compare it to teammates, when you compare it to a David Savard, who was a minus 1, when you compare it to a Caden Gooley, who was a minus 8, when you compare it to Jonathan Kovacevic, who was a plus 11, I think it is meaningful. I think that, as we've said before, he got a ton of points, and for that he should be praised. But he made a ton of bad decisions. He was reckless. He took unreasonable risks. And when he made those risks, the errors that he made were huge. Every time they were huge. They led to goals. And it's just bad risk management. And he, as we said before, he grossly overestimates his own ability. Bad instincts makes bad decisions. Second part of that was he quarterbacked the power play. How good was the Canadiens' power play this year?
Pretty bad.
It was 27th in the National Hockey League. So that not really valid for me. And he's bilingual. Well, that's good for the fans. It's helpful. It doesn't mean anything with respect to hockey. So what else do we want? I think we want a whole lot more. Pens and Panthers wish they had him back. I'm sorry, that's just silly. Penguins, Mike Sullivan is going to put up with that kind of irresponsible play from a player. And if you know anything about Paul Maurice at the Panthers, you would know that Mike Matheson would find himself in the press box more often than not. So thank you for that. I saw some comparisons in Facebook comments that we received about comparisons to Andrei Markov. Well, Andrei Markov put up numbers in a far less offensive era. Markov was excellent defensively. Matheson isn't on the same planet as Markov. We've said before, Matheson challenged Patrice Brisebois' record of minus 31 in a Canadian season. So for what he is, I give him full praise. For what he's not, I'm going to acknowledge that and not ignore it. And that's why in my list he received a grade of B minus.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And as we come along to C, you'll notice that I hadn't mentioned Mike Matheson yet. So, yeah, Matheson comes in with the C from me. I think everything you mentioned. Look, 62 points, spectacular. Minus 24, not so much, and kind of an outlier. I know not everybody likes that stat, but when things get a little bit kooky, like a minus 24, that's when you have to stop and think about things. I like that he can put up highlight reel moments. I like that at moments he can do everything by himself. I don't like the fact that he struggles to clear the puck out of his zone. I don't like the fact that he often does not want to pass the puck to younger players. And I think that you said what there was to say about the power play. I think that most other power play quarterbacks I'd probably have ahead of Matheson. Is it Matheson's fault? He's probably not the best fit for a number one puck moving defenseman. I think maybe lower in the lineup certainly could be successful, but yeah, he'll get a nice C from me. Another player that you already mentioned.
Can I just piggyback on that? I'm sorry. Just to piggyback on that, and I know maybe what's coming. Why are you mentioning something like plus minus? Well, let's look at other measures. Giveaways. Mike Matheson led the team in giveaways. High danger scoring chances when Mike Matheson is on the ice. 478. That led. That was the most on the Montreal Canadiens. You can go on and on and on. And I broke down the primary assists, secondary assists, and how that compares to a Caden Gooley, and I think you'll be surprised at offensively how comparable Caden Gooley was. First assists, 5-on-5, Mike Matheson has 8, Caden Gooley has 7. Secondary assists, 5-on-5, Mike Matheson 9, Caden Gooley 8. I think that if you do the math, and I've done the math, and I'm not going to prolong the case, that I think the grades that we've listed here, including yours, are valid, and of course we're open to hearing your opinions as well.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly open to hearing what people had to say. I know that like I said, the 62 points, super impressive. For me, I wasn't thrilled about some of the eye test stuff as well. And like I was getting to before, another player you had mentioned in your B that comes in at a C for me is Brendan Gallagher with the 31 points, also a minus 24. I felt like Gallagher had his moments. Don't get me wrong. There were games where I thought, wow, you know what? This is classic Brendan Gallagher. He looks great. I felt like there were some inconsistency issues. He wasn't always present. He wasn't, especially when he was playing more on a third line role. I feel like his impacts weren't always there. And on top of that, did not like the suspension. I didn't like the hit on Pelech that ultimately was it affected the team. It put his team in a bad spot too, especially with all the penalties and whatnot that led to that situation. So Gallagher, for me, gets into that C slot. Continuing along with my C's here, I also ended up putting Caulfield here. Career high 28 goals. I think that was great. I think when expectations kind of came in here, when we were starting the season, talking about, oh, he's going to get 35, he's going to get 40, maybe even 50. He ended up having a pretty slow start outside of, I guess, overtime goals. He wasn't really producing a ton at first. I appreciate that he adjusted his game. He put up a lot of points. He was able to be more of a passer at times. I felt just a little bit underwhelmed by Caulfield. And again, maybe there was some injury stuff. Maybe a big summer will change this. But like I said, he falls into number 3 just due to a little bit of underwhelming from me. The other players that come into this category, Jordan Harris, I thought he was really good. I want to see more of Jordan Harris. He's still young and developing. Savard, I think, was solid. But again, this is another guy like Mike Matheson. I think on another team, he's probably quite a bit lower in that lineup. I appreciate what Savard brings to the table, but he's not a perfect player. And then Jake Evans and Jaden Struble also round out my C's. Again, this is a situation where I don't think it's anything that they necessarily did wrong. They are the players who they are. It's just when you do comparisons around the league, I feel like they might not be playing as many minutes. I think it was great that Jaden Struble was able to get a long-term look in the NHL. I want to see this guy continue developing. And then with Jake Evans, he's never going to hurt you. He's a Swiss Army knife, like he said. He can do a lot of different things, but he's also not someone that's going to be a game breaker, at least during the regular season.
Yeah, I think that's all very well. For my C's, who did I have? I had the goaltenders, all of them. Jake Allen, Sam Montembeault, Caden Primo, and give your pluses and minuses. I think they're all kind of on the same level. Just kind of average goaltenders in the National Hockey League. And you know, maybe a slight nod to Caden Primo. He got that Molson Cup for the month of March. And pick your statistics. Sam Montembeault started obviously the majority of the games, 41 games played to Caden Primo. But in almost every case, it's Caden Primo, other than the one loss record. The number of wins, it was Sam Montembeault who got that because of his increased starts. The winning percentage, Caden Primo was going to win there. The goals against average, 299 for Caden Primo to Sam Montembeault's 314. Better there. 910 save percentage for Primo, 903 for Montembeault. Better there. 2 shutouts for Primo, 0 for Sam Montembeault. But overall, goals saved above expectation. If you rank them out, 3.6 for Caden Primo, 3.3 for Sam Montembeault. That places Caden Primo, according to MoneyPuck.com, Caden Primo as the 30th best goaltender based on goals saved above expectation, which everybody was using from the last year. 30th overall in the league for Caden Primo, 31st overall for Sam Montembeault. I think that goaltending is an issue. I think that goaltending was an issue this year. I think goaltending is going to have to be much better. I'll talk about the team and what I think needs to be better, but the goaltending for me was decidedly average or less throughout the season. That just when it looked like Caden Primo would have a breakthrough, then he'd have a terrible game. He was awful. Let's say it. He was awful against Detroit in that last game. Mm-hmm. And the same can be said of Sam Montembeault. C to Justin Barron. I think he looked better after he got recalled from Laval, and he looked pretty good in Laval. Kovacevic, you can plug him in, and he's going to play the same way. Arbor Xhekaj, after the time he spent in Laval, he was okay when he returned. Not himself, obviously, and the injury played into that. Joshua Waugh looked like he could be a wonderful addition to the offense some nights. Other nights you wouldn't find him. Mitchell Stevens, remember him? I thought he was serviceable on the fourth line when he was involved. Gustav Lindstrom, we forget about, but was competent when he was in the lineup. So I think it was 14, 15 games that he played. So those folks get my C's.
So coming up on D, I think I was a pretty harsh marker to an extent. Coming in first in terms of D, I went with a Michael Pezzetta. I understand the type of player he is. Fortunately, playing less than 10 minutes most nights, not really producing a whole lot. I think you can do better than Michael Pezzetta. You could also do a lot worse. I just didn't feel his impact on enough games. Arbor Xhekaj I ended up giving a D as well. I don't think he was ever particularly bad here. Of course, going to Laval ends up being a bit of a knock against him. I just didn't see much of a progression in his play. I don't think that he did anything better this year that he didn't do last year, so that's where he comes in with a D. Jesse Ullinen, this could be more of a situation where I feel that he just didn't end up fitting into this lineup. Not the coach's favorite guy. Typically, when he did play, he would be in that bottom six. So not even really contributing a ton on offense either. Justin Barron's another one that gets a D from me. Expected him to make out of camp. He didn't. He went to Laval. I think he was great in Laval. He was great in the last game when he got that call back up. I want to see more from Justin Barron, so maybe a little challenge for him going into next season. I included all three goalies here as well for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned. And I think the comparison to starting and backup goalies around the league also weighed into this quite heavily. You compare Montembeault to most goalies around the league. I'm probably taking another team's starting goalie with the exception of Eunice Korpisalo. Same with Caden Primo and any backups. Kovacevic ended up getting a D from me. Again, a situation where I felt like he was a healthy scratch quite often. Maybe not his fault that he doesn't seem to be fitting into the current lineup, but beat out by Jaden Struble for being in the lineup on a night-to-night basis, basically.
Well, there's going to be some overlap here. I have Michael Pezzetta. Michael Pezzetta is a fan favorite, no doubt, whether it's for his flow, whether it's for his 3 hits a shift kind of thing. You love this, and his willingness to engage. Rate his fighting skills, be that as they may. He's willing to stand in there. But 7 minutes a game, and lots of hits, but he took lots of bad penalties, for his ice time. The fourth line has to be productive. It has to contribute. It has to do something. I understand he's an energy player, but these days you need a whole lot more. Jesse Ullinen, for all the reasons you said, just not a coach's favorite. I think he looks like he skates like an NHL player. He's got an NHL caliber shot. Reluctant to use it. He's great in the shootouts. He's very good on the penalty kill. I think that he can be a help to another team, but it's not going to happen in Montreal. Christian Dvorak, well, he got 2 goals in his return, but not much else there. Tanner Pearson, boy, oh boy, I was tempted to go and dig up some of the quotes after the trade was done from some of the Montreal media praising this guy. He is what we thought he was going to be, and it wasn't very good.
So moving on to the F. So the big, I guess F stands for fail. We can agree that's probably correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So starting off my list, Josh Anderson, and what can we really say? It took him forever to get his first goal of the season. Maybe he had 1 or 2 good games in there. Beyond that, I did not see enough from Josh Anderson. His value plummeted basically to 0 this season, unfortunately, whether it was a mental thing or there's something else going on. Just an absolutely terrible season for Anderson. Raphael Harvey-Pinard gets an F as well. 2 goals in 45 games after all the excitement, getting the 2-year one-way contract. I know there are some injuries involved, but he still played more than half the season here and did not produce whatsoever. Even then, he was in the bottom of the lineup, mostly on the 4th line too, so did not see nearly enough from Raphael Harvey-Pinard. This is where Dvorak comes in for me. Only played the 30 games this season, only 5 goals. Tough break for Dvorak. He's been struggling to be healthy. Maybe this is a product of that, but again, I didn't feel like Dvorak put enough up in terms of points or in terms of his play. Probably the 2 most obvious ones. Colin White, 0 points this season is an F. I just don't think he's an NHL player at this point in time. Again, might not be his fault. He came in, he centered the 4th line, he did what he was supposed to. And then your favorite guy, Tanner Pearson, gets an F from me. I wasn't sure that I was expecting a whole lot. I think he had a few good games in October. Beyond that, he kind of disappeared into the background, and really you could tell that this was a player that didn't seem to fit in on this team at all.
So Colin White, 0 points. I think he was I think he was worse than Mitchell Stevens. I think he was worse than a lot of. He was a waiver pickup that was brought in so that that they would have a 4th line center when there was a bunch of injuries. He was terrible in the faceoffs. He was under 30% most of the time, playing 9 minutes, 0 points in 17 games, and didn't get any with the Penguins either, as far as I know. Harvey-Pinard, I don't think Harvey-Pinard is an NHL player. He's one of those guys who will be an AHL star, and you'll be able to call up for a couple games here and there, and you can put him on your 4th line. Josh Anderson, it's one thing to go through a drought, and what folks say is as long as you're contributing in other ways. Josh Anderson wasn't contributing in any other way. He wasn't using his speed effectively. He wasn't playing the physical game we know he can play. Josh Anderson, for whatever reason, he isn't feeling this system that Marty St. Louis is trying to teach. And he said that he spends too much time thinking about what he has to do, and he's never been like that. He's always just gone out and played. Now he's trying to figure out where he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to do. His system and Marty's his play and Marty's system just aren't a good match. I'm going to play. Let's let Josh Anderson say it in his own words.
At the end of the day, I don't really have any excuses, for the way I played this year, and like I said, I got a lot of time to reflect, to get back to being the player that I know I'm capable of being, and
I got a lot of things to work on this summer.
Listen to his tone. He mentioned it 3 or 4 times. He needs to get away from the game. This is just a huge weight on him. He needs to spend time with family and friends, he said. Needs to focus on other things other than hockey. When the cameras left, he said, "I've been terrible this season," and you can't disagree. Something when we think back of Kent Hughes said it himself leading up to the trade deadline this year, the year prior of March 2023, the phone was ringing off the hook for Josh Anderson, and Kent Hughes, in a mistake, decided he wasn't going to part with him. Now you could not give this player away, and he's going to have to get it together over the summer. One of the players who's getting married, hopefully, and I think it's mentally, it's not so much the rest of his skill fell off, that he's going to have to find his game, find his mental approach, find his passion about the game, which I think is just gone and is missing.
Yeah, I think that's all fair to say. Did Josh Anderson just forget magically how to play hockey? I don't know that would be the case. I would be certainly curious if that did happen. But like you said, he's going to have a big summer here, and perhaps before and after the wedding, take some time to watch some tapes and work on his game a little bit more. So with that, these are the individual grades that we gave to each player. Let us know your thoughts on that. I think we should also give kind of an overall team grade, whether it's, kind of for everything like coaching, management, and whatnot. I'll start this one off. I'm going to give them a team grade of C. Overall, I think this season, yes, they had more points in the standings. This season they had 30 points. Actually, last season they had more wins, 31 wins rather. 30 wins last season. Let me try that again. I'm saying 30 too many times. Last season, 31 wins. This season, 30 wins. So one less win. And the difference here is that Montreal picked up a lot of loser points. So last year they had 68 points. This year they have 76 points. So these are these 1-goal games that we keep talking about here. Some might see that and think that maybe it's a step forward. Well, it was off by 1 goal. It was close. But the way Montreal plays when they're in these tight games, they shut things down. I don't feel like they're always going for the win when they're either tied or within that 1 goal. They tend to just shut everything down. Not only will the other team not get too many chances to be able to go up more than 1 goal, but they don't get their own chances necessarily towards the end of that third period. So I feel like this was a very similar season to last season, all things considered. And to an extent, I feel like, yes, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are sticking to their plan, but at the same time, I'm not seeing enough of a push for a particular direction. They've not gone full sail mode, but they've also not been necessarily adding a ton. So they get a nice C from me. I feel like the expectation here was that they would take a little bit more of a step forward, but once again, the one fewer win and not enough change when it came to special teams or anything like that.
That's a really good summary. I'm for a lot of the same reasons. I give them a letter grade of D. They are the 28th place team out of 32. So that's why they get that grade. As far as the management, as far as Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes and Marty St. Louis, a good job. In the activity throughout the season, solid return on Monahan, solid return on Jake Allen, missed opportunity on David Savard. Maybe that will happen this summer. Fail absolutely on White and Pearson. And again, it's going to be threading. I'll keep saying it, threading the needle this summer. For me, when you look at the numbers, yes, one less win. As you said, that's a really good point. They had this season 16 games that went to overtime. Last year, 6 games. So 1 point from each. That's an extra 10 points. You talked about those loser points, an extra 10 points from the loser points, and almost without exception, they all came on the road. On the road, let's look at the home numbers. Last season, 17 games winning at home. This season, 16 games winning at home. 21 games lost last season, 20 games lost. Overtimes are similar, 5 this season, 3 last season. On the road, 14 wins this season, 14 wins last season. Losses on the road, 16 losses this year, 24 losses, 8 more losses last year. So they reduced their losses on the road by 8. That's huge. But where did it go? It went to overtime finishes. They had 11 games that went into overtime on the road this season. Just 3 last season. So it's a team that is learning to play on the road, at least to get games to come back to take games into overtime. That's positive. But overall, not a lot of significant progress. Standings wise, the only progress comes from those loser points. I think the number that another number that jumps out at me is the regulation wins. And when you're thinking about a team that's going to be ready to make the playoffs in the next year or the year after, that's a number that really has to take a jump. The Canadiens had just 20 regulation wins. They were tied for third fewest in the league. Just an overview, goals for, 236 goals for this year. That's 26th in the league. Goals against, 289. That's 29th in the league. Power play, 27th. Penalty kill, 24th. Shots per game, 28th. Shots allowed per game, 30th. Face-offs, 10th in the league. That's the only thing where they did pretty well, and let's give some credit to Monahan and Newhook on that. And I said regulation wins. They are 30th in the league on that. Now, are they being this whole talking point that everybody was mentioning, 1-goal games? Does that make them more competitive? Last season, they had 31 1-goal games. This season, they had 44 1-goal games. So that means there's an improvement, right? Well, just hold on. Last season, in 1-goal games, they had 17 wins. This season, in 1-goal games, they had 17 wins. 42 points last season in 1-goal games, 45 points this season, an extra 3 points they picked up. I'd be careful about that 1-goal game talking point. If you want to look at the other extreme, the Canadiens were involved in 29 3+ goal games last year. And this year they were involved in 29 this season, 35 last season. So fewer blowouts on either end. They got 20 points last season in those games, 14 points this season. I think we have to be, these numbers, when you drill down, we got to be careful here about saying there's going to be a big jump next year. The other thing, and I've mentioned this throughout the season, it's something that I was tracking. There isn't a place to find this. I had to track it on paper. The second game of a back-to-back. The Canadiens had 13 games, 13 back-to-backs this year. They won once. 1 win, 12 losses in their back-to-backs. That's got to be better. That's got to be better by a lot before they can compete for the playoffs. That's all about preparation. That's all about coaching. That's all about load management. This can happen, but coaching staff have to pay attention to that. Goaltending's got to be better. Special teams have to be way better for them to compete. As I said, 27th power play, 24th in the penalty kill. So my conclusion, I think they made modest progress. I think the individual progress was way ahead of the team progress this year. And don't get sucked into that conversation about one goal games that they're involved in the end, it didn't really make a big difference to the outcome of their season.
Yeah, I think these are all great points here, and I know we're going a little long in this segment, but we do have one more thing to quickly read out to everyone here before we head into the final break. There was a letter from Jeff Molson to fans. I'll get you to talk about this.
Jeff Molson says, "Dear fans, it's been a tough year. As a fan, I find the results of our team were disappointing. There were likely many reasons that explain what happened, but I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in making our team better. As far as what to expect in the offseason, I'll let our hockey operations team detail these in due time. When you have a disappointing season like the one we just had, no stone can be left unturned in looking for ways to improve the team. You have my full commitment that we will do everything possible to improve our team. That being said, despite subpar results this season, stability in our approach remains the focus. The mark of all good organizations in sports is stability and long-term vision. I remain convinced that we have a strong foundation and core of core players and veterans, as well as young players with promising futures. Like you, I'm a fan of this legendary organization. I hear your frustrations. I read your tweets after a loss. I share your elation and feel the same thrills when we succeed. I know how important it is to have a winning team in this city. You demand and you deserve better. I guarantee that we will do everything in our power to honor this and continue building the great heritage of the Montreal Canadiens. We hit a bump in the road this season. I see it as an opportunity to be stronger, better, and more prepared in the future. On behalf of the entire organization, I wish to thank you for your continued support, your loyalty, your passion, and being the best fans in the world. See you next season. Go Habs, go. Jeff Molson, written on April 11th, 2016, after an 82-point season. But couldn't that apply? Couldn't that apply again? Couldn't it apply again? Jeff, thank you. I think I speak for a lot of fans. We're tired of letters. We're tired of promises. We are tired of commitments. We want to see some real action, and we're not not oblivious to the plan, and that some major progress towards the rebuild will probably satisfy most fans more than just a mindless ad to get to the playoffs next season. So smart fans who listen to this podcast will agree, and I think they're smart fans throughout the Montreal Canadiens fan base.
Absolutely. So with that, our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, what area do you think the Canadiens need to improve this offseason? We want to hear from you, and we'll give you some time to think about it during this last break. We're going to hear a message, and make sure you stay with us. You are listening to Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition.
Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 292 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit our website anytime, canadiensconnection.fm. Also, feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And Rick, long episode here, but of course we wanted to make sure that we gave all the proper updates and analysis for all of our listeners.
Yeah, we, on one hand, apologize to you that this is going to be a long episode, but on the other hand, our commitment to you is trying to be the podcast that you trust, bring you all the information, and not just be dismissive in what happened or the things that people had to say, to sit down and do a bit of analysis and digging deeper like we typically do. An update since we went to break. For the game, we said that the Laval Rocket will finish out their season against Belleville on Saturday night in Laval. There is some roster news. Joshua Waugh will not play tonight. Yes, Joshua Waugh returned to the lineup after being cleared for his hand injury. Played Friday night. Early in that game, he took a penalty for elbowing. That penalty, that situation, that elbowing has been assessed Joshua Waugh a 1-game suspension. So he will be ineligible for the final game of the season. And there are minor injuries to Mitchell Stevens, to Jaden Struble, and to David Reinbacher. None of those three will play tonight. But for all of the updates, you know our team that includes Chris G and Amy and Amy Johnson, Patrick. We'll have at thn.com/Montreal the recap following the game, the Laval Rocket final game.
And I think that's a perfect example of how much is going on with the Montreal organization in general. Always something new happening, and where can you get all the updates? Well, here's what you need to know from Rocket Sports. We cover the Montreal Canadiens for the hockey news, and you can find all of that content, like you said, thn.com/Montreal. Game day posts feature articles. We also cover Laval Rocket and Trois-Rivières Lions. All your Canadiens coverage in one place. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search @AllHabs. On there, you will find several different things throughout the week. On Monday, you can find the Canadiens Connection podcast there. Last week's episode, entitled Fresh Faces Could Energize the Montreal Canadiens Lineup. And we were correct on that. In fact, if you paid attention to last week, every Tuesday, you get the Rocket Hockey Report, hosted by our own Amy Johnson, who covers the Laval Rocket. Last week's episode, entitled Laval Levels Up, Mailloux recalled to NHL, Jacky and Tuch added. Make sure you check that one out. That's some really good primer heading into the end of the Laval season here. And plus, this past week, we did a final stream of the Montreal Canadiens season as the Detroit Red Wings took on Montreal in the last game of the season. That happened on Tuesday, April the 16th. Myself and my colleague Nathan led the way through that. We had a lot of fun. Lots of Detroit fans there and lots of Habs fans as well. So we had some great discussions and some great commentary on that game as well. But stay tuned. There might be some more announcements about live streams coming up over the course of the offseason. So make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel @AllHabs. Also tap the notification bell so that you're the first one to find out about all of our new content. Plus, make sure that you are subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, Canadiens Connection. You can find that on all the podcast platforms. You can also find every episode at canadiensconnection.fm. It comes out every single Saturday, even throughout the summer and the off season. We don't go on vacation. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd appreciate if you left us a 5-star review. That would help us out a ton. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And just a couple of Rocket Sports team updates. First and foremost, join us. Rick, we're recruiting.
Well, I'll just say join us as a consumer of the content we put out, or join the team. We have a lot of fun, and are committed to our all of our audiences in putting out just great information. And if you just want to join us in our podcasts, in our coverage, we're easily portable. We usually have a big uptick in our viewership because there are fewer choices over the summer, but we'll be here. Our coverage is going to turn to the draft, obviously, and we have a slate of draft experts that'll be coming in, and you won't want to miss any of those shows coming up. So be sure to join us in one way or the other.
Absolutely. We'll be here this entire offseason to provide you all the best updates. So if you haven't already, make sure you check out all of that content, and we look forward to taking you through this offseason. Now it's time for our Canadiens Connection question of the week, and we ask all of our listeners, what area do you think the Canadiens need to improve the most this offseason? We want to hear from you. 5853-ROCKET is the text line. You can reach out to us on our social media as well, and we get tons of tweets, emails, and comments throughout the week. And our longtime listener and avid listener, She26, left a pretty nice comment on one of our latest YouTube videos.
She says, the one and only good news about Jack-Eye, that's Arbor Jack-Eye, is that his season-ending surgery's at the end of the season. So there's that, right? Also hoping that Gooley will be okay. How freaking exciting is the signing of little Jack-Eye? So happy for him and for Hutson. Awesome. Totally agree about Fowler. He's awesome. I've never heard of Sam Harris, but I have now due to your show. That's great. This may sound a little weird, but I'm more excited about what's been going on with the Laval Rocket. And we're glad to provide that coverage as well. She says, whoa, yay for Price and Weber. Glad that BC recognized them. We talked about the BC Hall of Fame last week. I love Mailloux too, another great player. Also looking forward to the other guys you mentioned. So another great show, guys. Thank you. A great comment from She26, who I know is going to be, we're going to be hearing from over the summer.
For sure. And like I said, we appreciate all the text, tweets, comments, and emails that we get throughout the week. We get a lot of them, so keep those coming in and let us know your thoughts. Coming up this week, CH Weekly is a little bit short. The final game of the Laval season is tonight on Saturday. Belleville's going to visit Laval, and Rick, you provided all the updates on the roster just at the beginning of this segment. So looking forward to that final game, and I'm sure fans will as well. We'll continue to bring you great coverage of the Laval Rocket in coming weeks.
Place Bell is going to be packed tonight for sure.
That's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcasting app. Also, share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, April the 27th, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.